Hey guys, and welcome to Quality Shot. I'm really excited to be joined by none other than the cricket connoisseur, Aaron. How are you doing, mate?
I'm doing very well, Faizan. Very well. I mean, the sun is out in Warwickshire today. It's absolutely beautiful. I know it is down there in Surrey as well. Obviously, just come off the back of a fascinating series between England versus India. And yeah, to be honest, mate, pretty happy.
So the T20 I series, obviously India again edging it that one 3-2. England were actually 2-1 up, and I think we can safely say they bottled it in that fourth T20 when they set the platform with the openers, and that was a collapse of the middle order of epic proportions. Let's be honest. The first thing I wanted to touch upon was the difference between the two teams was England stuck with pretty much the same team throughout the whole series, apart from one change which was enforced when Mark Wood bruised his I think it was his heel in the first T20. So second one Tom Curran played. Apart from that, Mark Wood came back in unchanged. For India, they chopped and changed, and it worked. So I feel like India got more out of it in terms of learnings and knowing, okay, this is what the team we want. Also, to be fair, they don't have any more T20s up until the World Cup, from what I know. It's just the IPL, whereas England do. So I guess they didn't need to experiment maybe as much. But considering that it was perfect conditions, the World Cup is going to be in India, I'm surprised they didn't tweak a little bit more. What are your thoughts?
Exactly the same. I think obviously India won the series as well, but they gained so much more from it. I feel like with England, very one-dimensional, of course, not just with the squad selection, but also at times with the bowling plans. It was very un-England-like. It was a very strange series, to be honest, in that regard. And I think it's going to be a massive opportunity lost because we had some great young players over there. First and foremost being Matt Parkinson, the Lancashire leg spinner. I know that Adil Rashid, of course, brilliant, had a pretty strong series in that T20I, had that brilliant ball to Virat Kohli, didn't he? The stumping by Joss Butler. But for me, with Adil Rashid, I mean, you can afford to give him a rest at some point. And we had Matt Parkinson. We know his calibre and quality. We've seen it so many times for the Lightning in the T20 Blast. So I just think England should have made a few more changes. I'm not saying wholesale changes per se, but as I said, Parkinson would have been one. And then another one which I would have liked to have seen is with Ben Stokes, just batting slightly higher up the order. Why not give it a shot? We've got absolutely nothing to lose. Let's face it, it's not like the tests where there's test championship points. Our place in the final was theoretically up for grabs in that series. It's not like the ODI where we've got Super League points. There's no points in offering this. It doesn't really matter. We could have lost 5-0. But if we would have learned stuff, they would have still been valuable heading into the next T20 World Cup. So for me, a massive opportunity missed. I think India got it spot on, giving young guys this opportunity. Ishan Kishan in particular. I know we'll talk about him and Kumar Yadav. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Also very clever from Virat Kohli to make them capped, makes them available for the mega auction next year in the IPL for RCB. So good work from Virat and, and Ravi Shastri there. But yeah, overall, I feel like India got it spot on in terms of giving these youngsters a chance and England got it wrong. I feel like we're a bit too stuck in our old ways per se.
Yeah, it was interesting, wasn't it? I thought it was very strange. Yeah, the Rashid thing's interesting because he clearly is England's best spinner in white ball cricket, and it will go down as one of, in my opinion, one of their greatest ever spinners in white ball cricket for sure. But you can afford, as you said, to give him a rest. And if you lose the match, you lose the match. But Matt Parkinson, it's good experience for him to come in and see what he can do. Liam Livingston as well was in the squad. Why not just bring him in? And this, I'm a big Moeen Ali fan, and this really did irk me because they sent him home, and we'll touch upon it in the test matches, which is fine because that's scheduled. But then to bring him back and then not play him in a single T20 to me was crazy when you're in India. And in my opinion, the team that's going to win the T20 World Cup this year, and I could be wrong, they're going to play two spinners. I'd be very surprised if a team plays one spinner and they win the World Cup in India. We'll see, but I would be surprised. And I think Sam Curran got in there because of his IPL performances for Chennai Super Kings, from what I know. But I'm pretty sure he's opening the batting there, so it's a very different kettle of fish. And for me, he underperformed. And again, I'm a big fan of Sam Curran, but the first 2-3 matches he didn't perform well. And at that point, I think England should have said we should probably, rest you, and Moeen can come back in. I personally would have gone Moeen at the start anyway. But again, I think the biggest thing was the fact that they went with the same team, and it just got a bit stale after a while. And it was one pace, and India just were very comfortable, I think, facing it. What are your thoughts on, I guess, England only playing one spinner as well? And Sam Curran, do you think he's an option, or is it again a case of it's a little too early for him?
Well, it's an interesting one. And for me, I think we got the selection of Sam Curran completely wrong. Because if you actually have a look at the stats, Sam Curran bowled less overs, in that T20I series than Ben Stokes. And he also didn't bowl with the new ball, which was something which he had done so well alongside Deepak Chahar in the IPL for CSK. So that was a bit baffling. And I agree with you, Faizan. I would have played Moeen Ali. The fact is, I know a lot of people saying he's not in the greatest form, this, that, the other. But in IPL, for example, he has the seventh highest strike rate in IPL history. So he obviously has the ability and the capabilities to strike a cricket ball very cleanly. If you look at his strike rate since the 1st of January 2019 as well, for England in T20Is, his strike rate's 168. It's better than Ben Stokes, who has one of 157. So why not have given Moeen a chance? Again, why not change something up? The only thing that I will say there, though, and again, this could be a problem for England cropping up in the World Cup against right arm off spin, for example. You look at that middle order, and you've got Stokes, Morgan, Curran, Ali. There's not really a lot of difference. I feel like we could do with a right-hander just to break it up slightly, because all teams need to do, as we saw with Shardul Thakur, bowl across the line, because all of England's T20I batsmen, for some reason, love hitting across. We don't really have many offside shots on display in this series. And they could just go to right arm off spin, get the ball spinning both ways, and we could be in trouble. So for me, I feel like Sam Curran, he shouldn't have played all 5 games, especially, and the way in which he batted as well. They're batting him at 8 and 9. And as you said, he'd been pinch hitting for CSK, he'd been batting in the top 6 at times as well. And we're batting him below Jofra Archer. Like, what's the point in that?
So I
So
think
for me,
he batted, what was it, at like 7 or 8, I think, in the first 4, and then the last one they put
batted
him at
9.
9. Yeah, which is crazy. It was almost like when he went in, I felt sorry for him in a way, because I was like, it clearly is a lack of faith in your batting, but we'll play you anyway, but we'll shunt you down to 9. And I think he bowled like an over in that match. So I was like, he may as well not turned up. It was just crazy to think about.
It was, and this is the thing with Sam Curran. I feel like in T20I cricket in particular, you really need a specific niche. And Sam Curran, the way in which he's been so successful for Kings 11 in 2019 and CSK in 2020 was by having that defined role. He's 22, he's a young cricketer, he needs clarity. Okay. And in the IPL under the leadership of MS Dhoni, he was opening with a new ball. Sam, do that. Maybe bowl a few at the death as well if we need you alongside Shardul. And as we said, bat in the top 6, go up there, express yourself with the bats. With England, I don't see him being a regular fixture until we give him a bit of a confidence boost or a bit of faith with the new ball. That is Sam Curran's perfect, ideal scenario. Open up, get swing. We saw that with the dismissal of Kara Hall in the first T20I in Ahmedabad. And then from then on, it was a case of him bowling 2 overs per game in the middle overs and not coming into bat. So again, I think that's on England. I feel like we misused him. And as I said, I think we could have used Livingston or Moeen Ali as a better option in this particular series.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a case of, unfortunately, at the moment, I think the makeup of the England side, you have Wood and Archer opening in T20s now, and that's what they want to go with. And I kind of don't blame them, because they can blow people away at the start. But yeah, if Sam Curran's going to play, I think he has to open. So if he's not, then you just say, well, okay, your time will come, but just not at the moment. And then Moeen Ali, I think the one thing I'd say about him, and it's a really interesting point, because I think Nasser Hussain made a really good point, which is he's one of England's best 6 hitters in terms of hitting it effortlessly. If you look at someone like Buttler, you've got Buttler, Roy, Stokes, and I guess Morgan as well, and Bairstow. But I think Moeen Ali's in there, right? Like when I say he's in there, he's amongst that large group. But he's someone who, I think, lower down the order, if you're not going to have Buttler finishing, then who else is going to do it? And I think this is the issue that England have got, and that leads me nicely onto the conundrum, which I've got very weird views on this, which I don't think most people agree with me on it. But there's this whole issue with Buttler and Roy opening. Bairstow, obviously, they shunted him down to 4. I did feel a bit sorry for him, because he was performing well with Roy. Buttler was obviously a floater before and was seen as the ultimate finisher. But then England thought, we'll put you up and open because we want our perceived best player, which I can see why he's their best player, facing the most amount of deliveries at the top. He hasn't performed badly. I think he's performed really well. I think he averages, 48 opening? Maybe hasn't been, for me, as explosive as he has when he's been a finisher. But I think the issue for me is that England are missing a finisher now. And that is missing from the team. I think the makeup is now askew, and it's not quite right. And they're struggling to know what to do there. So what's your opinion on that?
Well, that's a great question. And it is one which sprung up on numerous occasions, not just in this series as well. I thought against Australia in the summer at times as well, struggled to finish off an innings. For me, it's I think you do have to go Ali. Or if not, you have to trust Sam Curran because these two can finish an innings. They are two of England's pocket dynamos, per se, in the lower to middle order. With Butler, I like him opening. I actually really like him and Roy opening. I love it. I think it's brilliant. Josh Butler's done nothing wrong. He was brilliant in the Australia T20 series, decent against Pakistan, and of course, excellent in South Africa and in this series as well. So for me, Josh Butler, keep him opening. I like him as an opener. That's just my personal opinion. I like the dynamic of innovation, enterprise with Josh Butler with Bruce, power hitting, strength, power, just from Jason Roy. With regards to the finisher, though, again, Ben Stokes isn't a finisher. And this is something which I don't think many people realise. But if you look at his stats, I mentioned earlier 157. That's his overs 16 to 20 strike rate. So at the death, which sounds okay. That sounds okay. He's striking at nearly 160. But when you compare it to Andre Russell, for example, from the West Indies, who has over 200, Hardik Pandya, who exceeds 190, Colin de Grandhomme from New Zealand, who exceeds 190 as well, it pales in comparison. Now, in comparison to Moeen Ali at the death, his is over 170. So for me, Moeen Ali has to slot in there somewhere. Even if you're not going to trust him to bowl his allocated 4 overs every single game, if you think he's too expensive, fair enough. But just give him the responsibility to finish an innings. That's my personal view. He can do that. He's done it for RCB in the past. He's done it for Worcestershire. He's done it for England as well. Let's not forget. Did it against Pakistan last summer. So for me, I would trust Moeen Ali. He'd be my finisher in the team. And if not, bring in Sam Curran and give him some faith in the new ball as well in the power play.
Yeah, I agree. I think if they're going to go with Butler at the top, then yeah, I think I'd go with Moeen Ali definitely to finish it off. I've got a very different opinion, as you can probably imagine, which is I think that they should go Roy and Bairstow at the top, and it's a very unpopular opinion, and the reason why I say it, and it is a very difficult one because I think, as you said, Butler, he averages 48. It's really difficult to say he shouldn't be opening. I just think if you want to do what's best for the team as a whole, I think Bairstow gives you enough as an opener. I think he's very underrated as a T20 opener. And I know it's different format, ODIs, but I think he's shown enough in the T20s to say that actually him and Roy can do it at the top. And I feel like he's less shackled than Butler at the top. I know it sounds really strange to say about Josh Butler, but I feel like Josh Butler knows that there's more value on his wicket at the top. And we will see innings like we did against India where he will go big. But there's also innings where he'll go slowly at the start, and it's almost like he's not quite there, and he doesn't want to go like kind of 1 to 100 like that. He's going through the gears, shifting through them, and he's like, okay, I'm not feeling 100%, so I'm not going to go kind of hell for leather. Whereas when he comes in as a floater, he's got that license to say, go on, do whatever you want, which I'm sure Morgan already says to him opening, but I think subconsciously he doesn't do it. And that's kind of where I am with it. But I mean, it's kind of by the way. I think they're definitely going to go with Butler opening long term. I think that's there's no point. I guess at some point it will become a redundant conversation because I don't think once he plays another series or two opening, I don't think there's any point in discussing it. But yeah, I think Moeen Ali to finish. I just feel like Butler is the best finisher around. I genuinely do, and I thought that for a very long time. So that's why I feel like they're missing it. But I think Moeen is second best. That leads me nicely onto the number 3 conundrum. Well, I say it's a conundrum, but is it?
It isn't.
Because
No.
you know what? I agree with you. It's not. But I then listened to Kevin Peterson, who can be very persuasive, and he said Daud Malan is fantastic in England, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia. These kind of surfaces where it comes on, and I think you saw, he loves playing, especially the seamers down towards that third man region using the pace. He said he's found after playing the the Legends series that hitting 6 in the middle overs is not easy, and he thinks maybe Daud Malan doesn't quite have that explosiveness that he's looking for. So he would actually go with Butler and Roy, but Bairstow at 3. But I think he's mates with Bairstow, so maybe I'll take it with a pinch of salt. But with Malan, I think, look, he averages 50, and I think it's a bit unfair on him that there's this scrutiny on him because the first time he's playing in India, right, he scored in the last one. I know it was a flatter deck, but he still scored a hell of a lot of runs in the last one. Yes, he struggled, but you can't expect someone to just come in, even if he is the number 1 T20 batsman, ranked-wise anyway, in the world, to just come in and kind of hit the ground running straight away. It's difficult. He's still got a whole IPL left, and he'll have other T20s as well to play for England. I think if he has a good IPL, normally, and you probably wouldn't, because I know you're a huge IPL fan,
Yeah.
I would normally say that the IPL doesn't have too much relevance to some of the what like next year in Australia, I personally don't think it has as much relevance because of the conditions, different conditions. This year, I think it's got a lot of relevance because it's exactly the same conditions. People can definitely use that as a gauge. And Dowd Malan is another example. He's playing for, I think, Kings 11 Punjab, isn't it?
Yep, Punjab Kings.
Yeah, so let's see how he does there. If he performs well there, it's a good experience. But I would say you have to keep faith with him. If his name was Ben Stokes or Joss Butler, there wouldn't even be this question. I genuinely think that. But because his name's Dowd Malan and he doesn't have this kind of aura around him and this kind of fanfare around him, people think actually no, he's dispensable, and I disagree. So what do you think, Milan? I think you from what I can see, you're going to say Milan 100%. There's also murmurings about Hales. So I'm going to ask you about Hales as well and say, would you put Hales in there? Or do you think even Hales should be in the squad come the T20 World Cup is another question.
Well, we'll start with Alex Hales. Why not? We'll get into the juicy bit first because I do have an opinion about Alex Hales. And for me, I know what he did. The relationship with Morgan, I don't think is fully repaired. But the fact is, at some point, Alex Hales needs an answer. He needs an answer from Chris Silverwood. He needs an answer from Ashley Giles. He needs an answer from Owen Morgan as to whether or not he's going to be playing for England again. Because we need to know as fans as well. It's so tiring to keep on bringing up Alex Hales' name when he's not getting into the squad or when we think he should be in the squad and he's not. We need answers, as does Alex Hales himself. So for me, if it was up to me, and it isn't, it's up to Owen Morgan. And again, Owen Morgan has earned this right. He has created this team from the ground up. I think he should be in the squad. I don't think he should be in the starting 11, but in the squad. Because let's say Royal, Bairstow, or Butler got injured, and we need a top order batsman who has the ability to take a game away from the opposition. Alex Hales can do that. He's the Big Bash's leading run scorer. I know he doesn't have an IPL contract, but he's been brilliant for Notts. He's brilliant for England whenever he needed him as well. Think back to Trent Bridge in 2018 against Australia. Absolutely marvellous. So for me, Alex Hales commands a place in the squad. Not necessarily the starting 11. Of course, he'll have to work his way up. But I think definitely should be in contention in the wider squad itself. So that's my thoughts on Alex Hales. With regards to Dowd Malan, I just want to start off by saying, who's the fastest ever batsman in T20I cricket to score 1,000 runs?
I'm a
That would be
serious
my
Dowd Malan.
argument. It is Dowd Malan. It's not Babar Azam. It's not Virat Kohli. It's not Brendan McCullum. It's nobody else in the world. It is Dowd Malan who did it in 24 innings. And the fact is, this whole conversation about him and Bairstow, if we want to look at that in a bit more depth, I have actually got the stats. Of course, I've got the stats. This is since the 1st of January 2019. Dowd Malan has scored 753 runs. Bairstow scored 654. If we look at their strike rates, which has always been a massive thing with Dowd Malan, people saying he's too slow, this, that, the other. He has a strike of 142.34. Okay, compare that to Johnny Bairstow, fair enough. Bairstow has a 148.97. But Milan's average is 50.2, Bairstow's is 32.7. So there's a massive, massive gap there in terms of volume of runs and in terms of match-winning knocks as well. If we look at match-winning knocks, think back to South Africa, the knock in Boland Park, the 99 out at Newlands. We go back to the New Zealand series in 2019 and he blew away the Black Caps at McLean Park. And it was a Napier as well, a Hamilton, it's one of those two. Had some fantastic knocks in that series. And in this series, I know he didn't have the greatest of series by any means, but that last game to me was a redemption tale. It really was. There was so much scrutiny, so much pressure, all the media piling on saying he's not good enough to be England's number 3, this, that, the other, because he had scored 80 from 77 balls in the previous 4 games. And that for me just showed the calibre of Dowd Malan, not just in terms of as a batsman, but as a man. The amount of mental fortitude that he showed in that particular innings said to me that he is an England number 3. It's as simple as that. Series opener, pressure, the series is on the line, and he produces that. It was arguably the second best knock in that game from an English perspective alongside Joss Butler. And another key thing, you mentioned there about stature and reputation, fanfare per se. I think that does cloud our perception of Dowd Malan. Because if we look at fours hit as well, I go back to the whole Bairstow debate. He's hit 18 more fours than Johnny Bairstow, and yet only struck 5 less sixes. So he's actually scored more boundaries. And if you look at his boundary percentage, it's 63%. Johnny Bairstow's is only 65.7. So although Bairstow's is bigger, it's not a lot. It's not a massive difference. And again, we could go into dot ball percentages. I could give you every single stat. And the stats are saying Dowd Malan is a brilliant number 3 batsman. So for me, only England could even contemplate dropping the number 1 batsman in the world, the fastest man to 1,000 T20I runs. So for me, I would keep him. The only issue for Dowd Malan heading into this next World Cup, you mentioned there about the Punjab Kings. I don't think he's going to get many games. I'm going to be honest, because the Punjab Kings have two set batsmen in their top four in Chris Gale, the universe boss. They have Nicholas Pooran, and then in terms of their bowling, they brought in Riley Meredith and Jai Richardson. So it's going to be tremendously hard for him to get a run of games for Punjab in the IPL unless they really, really struggle. And I don't think that's going to happen with that top four. That's usually their strongest asset in the Indian Premier League. So it's an interesting one. If it was me, and of course it's not up to me, but if it was me, he's at number 3. It's as simple as that. If you want to bring Ben Stokes up, bring him up to number 4 and have Johnny Best as a spin hitter because Ben Stokes is, what I'll say, best attribute in T20 is when he comes in the power play. He's got 2 IPL centuries, both have come in the power play, one batting at 1, the other one batting at 5. Why not put him at number 4 then? But I don't think Dan Malan is the root issue of England's problems. I just almost feel like he's the one that everyone piles the pressure on because he's not a World Cup winner. And I don't think we should do that, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I think maybe a little bit of a scapegoat. I 100% agree with you. In fact, I was completely outraged actually at the start that people were even talking about it. I just said, how can they even be discussing it considering he's number 1 T20 bats? I just thought it was incredible to even bring it up, to be honest with you. But it just seemed to be a thing that, on Sky they're talking about it a lot as well. And I just thought I didn't know why. But after you hear something enough and you just think, oh, sure, well, maybe that is a discussion topic. You know what I mean? It's interesting you said about the IPL as well because Mr. Universe Boss has kind of revolutionized himself at number 3. It seems at the PSL he was batting there as well, and he seems to be batting quite well there, which would be Dawid Malan's position. So interesting to see if he will get any games. I hope he does because he's one, it'll be good practice for the T20 World Cup, and 2, just good experience overall. And I think he needs games. From an Indian point of view, they chopped and changed as we said. Let's start with Ishan Kishan because I know you seem like a big fan of his.
Yeah.
On debut, right, came in and let's say bludgeoned his way to 50 in let's say next to no time. Really, really impressive stuff from him, and he looks like one for the future, doesn't he?
Oh, he is. He is. I've seen Ishan Kishan for a number of years now, and for anyone who does have Netflix, brilliant documentary, 2018 Cricket Fever. You can actually see him and his family in Bihar. It's a great, great story. And Ishan Kishan, I remember him in 2017 playing for the Gujarat Lions because obviously CSK and Rajasthan were banned back then. I remember looking at him and thought, this guy's got some potential. I didn't actually realise that he had this much potential to become a match winner. But I thought, okay, he's pretty innovative. He's a little bit unorthodox, a little bit of a hint of Rishabh Pant sprinkled in there per se. But my word, ever since joining the Mumbai Indians, his career has just gone from strength to strength to strength. And this is a testament to his character as well. To go out there, let's not forget this was in front of fans as well. This wasn't behind closed doors. You're going in front of 66, 67,000 people in the world's largest cricket stadium, this colossal coliseum of cricket. And he produces that. It was absolutely magnificent. It was a legendary debut, in my opinion. He really announced himself, not only to Indian fans who'd been seeing him for so many years in the IPL performing for Mumbai Indians, but also on a global scale. And I was so, so happy. I know it was against my team, obviously, but I do have a bit of a soft spot for Ishan Kishan and Surya Kumar Yadav because I like to see, no matter which country, I like to see domestic talent get that chance, that opportunity to be rewarded per se, as opposed to just picking the same players again and again and again based off reputation. So for me, Ishan Kishan, I know he didn't have the greatest end to that series, but that debut, my word, the boy's got talent, and if you're an Indian fan, keep an eye on him. Simple as that. He's got a very, very bright future ahead of him, in my personal opinion.
I agree. He looks like a talent for the future. And let's touch upon the other debutant and Surya Kumar Yadav, a long-awaited debut. I know a lot of Indian fans are saying he should have made his debut a long time ago. At 30 years of age, he's no spring chicken, but he's still got some years left in him. And what a way to start off as well. Jofra Archer coming in, bowling a 90-mile-per-hour bouncer, and he just goes, "Thank you very much. I'll just pull you, over deep square leg for 6." And it was just a ridiculous shot, one that you probably just dream of hitting on your debut, really, if your first ball in international cricket. But he went on to, hit a ridiculously good 50-plus score as well, and then went on to score another good 30-plus score as well in the other T20. He looks very, very good, and they'll call for him to be on the ODI side. Obviously, he didn't get that chance. But what do you think about him?
Well, he's great. Again, someone who I have a lot of admiration for. I am an RCB fan, so obviously I don't like seeing him and Kishan tearing us to pieces every single year in the IPL. But Surya Kumar Yadav, in one word, is class. He's absolutely class. And something which I saw in this series was him really expressing himself. And I think that's a real testament again to his character and, of course, the team environment. Because you mentioned that six against Archer. That's absolutely preposterous. It was a great, great shot to get off the mark in international cricket. But in addition to that, it was the innovation. He's usually someone who I think as someone a bit more traditional. But in this series, he showed these lovely little flicks. He went down on one knee and went for the scoop shots and the paddle shots as well. He's just got a great repertoire of shots in his arsenal and at his disposal. So for me, Suryakumar Yadav, again, it put a smile on my face. I like to see him being rewarded. He has been in the IPL for years. He's been so consistent. He's been one of Mumbai Indians' leading run scorers for the past 3 seasons. Was in fact their leading run scorer last year when they had a team featuring the likes of Rohit Sharma, Quinton de Kock, Kishan, and the Pandya brothers and Pollard. So yeah, for me, Yadav, real, what I say, almost a bright spark in that team. And fingers crossed he gets more opportunities alongside Sanju Samson. He's another one who I hope gets a few more chances in the future as well to really express himself in T20s.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny that you said that he, in a way, you associated him with being a bit more traditional in the way that he plays. And actually, it's funny because I haven't really seen much of him at all. And I got that feeling a little bit, and not a bad feeling, because obviously you said he still was playing those flicks, etc. But I got the feeling that he could potentially, and I don't know exactly how good his longer format stats are. I think in one day, his one day stats are pretty good. I don't know what his like Ranji Trophy stats are, kind of the longer format and the 4 day stuff. But he looks like someone who normally I look at a player on debut and I can normally, I feel like I can normally tell whether they can play all three formats, whether they have that. So Devon Conway's one that I saw recently, and I saw him in the T20,
easily.
and I just thought, mate, this guy can play. He can play ODIs and Test cricket easily, and he obviously proved it recently in the ODI series against Bangladesh, right? Scored, and I was so happy for him. Actually tagged him, and I think my excitement. I think he saw it, but probably was like, "Who's this freak tagging me and stuff?" Going my boy Devon Conway. But yeah. I think Sky, as he likes to be called, or fans do, looks like a similar player. He looks like someone who he looks like he could be a fixture in all. He is 30 though, but I feel like maybe that maturity he's gained with age probably is the reason as well why he looks more comfortable. Ishan Kishan, I think, is a very good talent. He's a bit younger. I feel like he's more of a T20 specialist. I could be wrong, but I feel like this is really his kind of format, Ishan Kishan. Whereas Suryakumar Yadav, I feel like he could play in different formats. And that's kind of the feeling I get. And I guess time will tell. India's so strong, so I don't even know if we'll get a chance. But let's see. Kind of going on from the debutants who performed really well onto someone who in the past has performed extremely well for Indian T20s, but unfortunately didn't have a particularly good series. He did redeem himself in the ODI series, KL Rahul, but his T20 series was really, really poor, and he lacked a lot of confidence. He got cleaned up quite a few times in kind of uncharacteristic ways. Ate a few deliveries, chipped it to mid-on, mid-off, just didn't look himself. And I think a lot of people are saying he wasn't in good form. I think the 2 games before the series, I said, look, he's been so good for a number of years. You've got to stick with him for the whole series. I reckon I feel like there's going to be pressure on him in the IPL, because I know India placed a lot of importance on that. And again, similar conditions. I feel like if he doesn't perform in the IPL, considering they've got no more T20s, he might not make the side. Now, I think there's a lot of pressure on him, and his T20 days may be numbered. What are your thoughts?
It's an interesting one. Again, a player that I have great admiration for. I remember him starting off his career in Karnataka, still plays for Karnataka. And of course, RCB, when the scorecard used to read Lokesh Rahul instead of K. Rahul. So for me, I'll always have that respect for him. I like K. Rahul. He is one of my favourite Indian players. I never think that RCB should have got rid of him. And you talk there about IPL. If we're talking consistency, there's a reason why K. Rahul is being given this chance so often in the India team. It's because 2018, third leading run scorer, 2019, second, 2020, orange cap holder. That is incredible consistency. He scored 24% of Punjab's entire runs in the 3 years that he's been there. So for me, I don't think it's a case of him having a bad IPL. He knows the IPL. He's brilliant in the IPL. He's one of the most prolific run scorers. Whether or not he'll be the orange cap holder, only time will tell. It's as simple as that. He's going to have to rely on his middle order as well, of course, in this year's tournament, try and get them through to the playoffs and accentuate the amount of opportunities he gets to score runs. But for me, I don't think it's a case of Kara Hall just being dropped entirely. He's so good. And if you look at his T20I average, he averages over 40. And yes, he's not had the greatest of times so far. Didn't have a great series against England. Didn't have a great time in Australia either. If you look at his previous record, it speaks for itself. He's a brilliant, brilliant opening batsman. So for me, yes, India could trial out other ones, but in terms of him being omitted from the squad entirely, I don't see it happening. The fact is, his stats and records speak for themselves, and in my opinion, should be given another chance later down the line.
Yeah, it's interesting because I guess that chance would end up being the World Cup, wouldn't it? Which is strange in a way. They don't have any other T20s leading up to it, but I guess that's just the way their schedule's gone. It's funny because he did have a 40 plus average, and I think it's now gone down to 39.92, but round up to 40.
Yeah.
Unlucky though for him after that really poor series. Unfortunately, he's dropped below that, but he's still. I mean, look, he's a phenomenal player and has been for quite some time in that format, and I think it's more a question of the fact that, well, there's an issue here, isn't there? That he might be in the squad, but Virat Kohli is opening now. Now, this is what we can go on to quite nicely, which is Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma. Now, he took it upon himself. He said, you know what, KL Rahul, Rohit Sharma, they're my guys. They're going to open. They're definitely going to do it. Then two matches later, he goes, actually, sorry, I'm going to open. He goes, the best player should open. Fair enough, but obviously that means that there's going to be, unfortunately, for someone like KL Rahul, it looks like he's not going to get a look in the starting 11 anyway, potentially long term. What did you think of that pairing?
Oh, it's an interesting one because for years I've wanted Kohli opening for RCB, and that is going to happen this year alongside Paddy. So I was in favour of it, and of course it paid off. It's an absolute masterstroke. The only thing that I will say, and this could be interesting into the future, something that England did do in this particular series was bowl early with Adil Rashid. And we saw in that first over between him and Sharma, he only went for 3 runs, but then England put him aside. Now, for me, with Virat Kohli opening, and we've seen this in the IPL with Shreyas Gopal, we've seen it against Adam Zampa, Rashid Khan. I can list you an entire bunch of leg spinners who come on early in Virat Kohli's innings and get him out quite quickly. So that's one thing that I do worry about. If teams are going to go into that World Cup, open up with seam, for example, as most teams do, or open up with off spin, for example, I think Kohli will be absolutely fine. But I think early in his innings, there is this perceived weakness against leg spin. So we'll have to wait and see if it pays off. We will have to wait and see because teams could do that. And if it crops up again in the IPL, again, that could be problematic for India in that next World Cup. But in terms of the partnership itself, I like it. I really, really like it. Kohli's so classy. Of course, it's cliche, but you want your best batsman facing as many deliveries as possible. And then Rohit Sharma's Rohit Sharma. He's the hitman. He's one of the best white ball players in the entire planet. So for me, I like it. Will it be long term, though? We'll have to wait and see because that's the problem with Kohli. You alluded to it there. He said beforehand Rahul was his man, and now he's replaced him. He said that before with Kuldeep Yadav and Yuzvendra Chahal, and that hasn't proved to be the case in the ODIs. He dropped them too the other day as well. So you never know with Virat, you never know with Ravi Shastri. They're always prone to chopping and changing in that squad. But I think if they do go with it, could be pretty good. And it also makes that middle order a lot better, in my opinion. You can bring in another anchor, for example. You can bring in the likes of an Ishan Kishan to add some explosiveness in the middle order. So we'll have to wait and see. But in theory, I quite like it.
It's an interesting one because there's obviously a perception in India they didn't get on as well. So it's interesting they're going to open up and they're going to have to. Well, they performed pretty well in the last one, didn't they? So I guess it looks like on a cricketing basis anyway, they seem to be performing well. So that's an interesting one. I guess watch this space. I think the World Cup will be interesting. I think, as you said, a lot of people will open with leg spin, especially if England, I guess New Zealand got Ish Sodhi, Zampa. That's quite Rashid Khan, obviously. So Pakistan, we've got Shadab Khan. I guess we go with him. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes for sure going forward. We talked about Bhuvneshwar Kumar before. I mean, obviously, amazingly good, very economical. You mentioned the IPL stats there. I think it was one of the power plays is around a 5 economy rate, which is ridiculous. And Shardul Thakur had this exactly the same as in the ODIs, this kind of handy knack of getting wickets in the middle overs after getting slapped in the first, I think, ODI, kind of everywhere. He kind of came back with vengeance almost, which is good to see. I guess finally on the Indian front, I mean, Virat Kohli averages over 200 chasing in India, by the way. For anyone that does, that loves Virat Kohli, that'll be a nice stat to lap up. And obviously, he was a leading run scorer with 231 runs. I guess for you going forward, considering that India won that 3-2, and we're talking the T20s, looking forward to the T20 World Cup, if I had to put you on the spot and say to you, who do you think, not necessarily going to be the favourites, but who would be your pick to go in? Because I think in the back of my head, right, I've got India and England. Obviously, India, I think, are always going to be favourites going into a home World Cup, whether it be T20s or ODIs in this current generation anyway. Whether they will win or not, I don't know. England obviously will be up there. And I actually think New Zealand are there. And I could be wrong because they're very strong at home, and away from home, we haven't seen as much from them. But the fact that they can just bring in people when Williamson and Taylor are injured or Ferguson injured, and they just come and they found these gems on this little, it's a small country population-wise compared to most other countries. They're a bunch of nice guys, but don't take them for granted or don't think that they're rubbish because they're quality in all formats. So my actually left field choice would be New Zealand, which we'll see whether that happens. What would be your pick?
It's a great question. It really is. And I think it's going to be a fantastic tournament. So for me, I think India are the quote-unquote favourites. I think England, of course, you look at that batting, can win them the T20 World Cup alone. You mentioned New Zealand. They're my quote-unquote dark horses. And another team which people seem to have almost gone on the radar, in a way, is the West Indies. I know that they're T20I rankings, and you look at them right now and you think, there's no way they're winning a T20 World Cup. But in bilateral series, they don't have the likes of Andre Russell, Bravo, Pollard, for example. Gale doesn't really play often as well. Looking ahead to the T20 World Cup, they are going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Oh, they will.
And in addition to that, we talk about spin. If you look at the Caribbean Premier League, for example, they played in Tobago last year, Trinidad and Tobago, at Brian Lara Cricket Academy Stadium in Tarouba, which was really spin conducive. And as I said, these big names actually came to the forefront and played spin pretty well. So I don't think spin's going to face the West Indies at all. They've got guys in the IPL playing, like Nicholas Pooran, for example, who can come in, be that explosive power hitter in the middle order. So I also fancy the West Indies. But as I said, there's about 4 or 5. Don't discount Pakistan either. I think Pakistan can make a decent charge. I really do. I think Pakistan have got some excellent young players. Hyder Ali, for example, could be an interesting shout for the World Cup.
If we win in India against India in the final, for example, I think they'll have to make a quick exit, let's say, from the stage, which would be quite funny. But yeah, I think Pakistan are. I think we've always got a chance. We've got a lot of talent, unrefined talent, and I think it's the makeup of our team who we pick. We've been a bit better with. You mentioned actually quite rightly so that you want to see people picked on domestic performances rather than reputation. I think Pakistan are starting to do that more so. And it's funny, the West Indies I completely forgot, but I shouldn't because I keep on saying, like you, they're the World Cup champions.
Yeah,
coming into this,
they're
defending champions, right? And I saw them in the T20 series against Sri Lanka, and they had also had Lendl Simmons and Alvin Lewis opening up, and they had Chris Gayle at 3, and they were still missing people like Hetmyer could come into there. They still had Andre Russell who was missing, Sheldon Cottrell was missing, and if you look at that middle order, I mean, they had Dwayne Bravo, I think, at 8 or 9, and he can still bat. So let's be honest, let's kind of not forget him. So, I mean, he's still a fantastic death bowler and change-up bowler. So they've got a lot going for the West Indies, and I think I agree with you. I think you can't sleep on them. They'll be up there, I think. So it'll be an intriguing World Cup for sure. For sure. And that's all from me. Is there anything you want to touch on before we wrap up?
I think we've pretty much covered every single base there, Faizan, to be honest. I don't really think there's much more that I needed to touch upon. I mean,
and where can people find you? So you've obviously got your podcast. Do you want to plug yourself?
Oh, just briefly, yeah, the County Cricket Podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, at the County Cricket on Twitter. And yeah, just give it a listen. We've got some good guests, some good, obviously, banter on there as well with me and my co-host, Joe Nutsy Nuttall. So yeah, if you want to listen to some county cricket related content, as I said, with good guests, good interviews, the County Cricket Podcast is the place for you. Perfect.
Yeah, and also follow you on Instagram, which you've got fantastic little snippets and bite-sized little reviews and stuff as well, which is really nice. So make sure you follow Aaron at the Cricket Connoisseur, isn't it?
Yep, with an underscore. Yep.
With underscore, okay, on Instagram. Thanks very much, mate. And guys as well, please do remember to like the channel and subscribe as well if you haven't already. Thank you very much for tuning in.